Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Cajuns Insider. My name is Abdul Abusad. Alongside with me is my Cajun Sports Talk co-host and betting expert, Banyan Turner. Good afternoon, Banyan. How are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing good, doing good. Be talking a little Cajuns ball here today, football that is. Not quite there yet for basketball, yeah, we're getting there. All right. So, Cajuns last Saturday were at home against Southern Miss, and it was a rivalry game. And look, I'm going to take that with a grain of salt because I don't know if I really consider Southern Miss a rivalry right now, given that they have pretty much owned us for like a long time now. It's like saying Acadiana High and Lafayette High are rivals, even though they really aren't, because the last time Lafayette High beat Acadiana, which, by the way, these two schools play each other every single year. The last time Lafayette High beat Acadiana High was 2007. So I don't know if you really consider that a rivalry when you haven't beaten a team in 18 years. As far as the Cajuns go, we've beaten Southern Miss once, I believe, in the last a few years, but it's been a pretty bad streak in terms of wins and losses against Southern Miss as of lately. And I mean lately as in the last 50 years. Cajuns lose the game 22-10. It was a rough showing by the offense. Defensively, I thought the Cajuns played pretty well. Banyan, give me your initial thoughts. By the way, me and Banyan were covering the game from the sidelines. Banyan, your thoughts on the game and how it went through your eyes.
Yeah, before that, going back to the rivalry, we are 4-6 in the last 10, and UL is 5-22 against Southern Miss.
There we go. Look at that.
So the 4 wins came in the last 10 years. So one of them was before that. But other than that, I think the defense did really well, especially the defense. They've proven that they can actually tackle and they can play that they're supposed to. We thought they were going to play all year. The offense just can't move the ball like they're supposed to. They had glimpses of it last week. They had glimpses of it the first drive. The first drive we went down, scored. I think it was a pretty long drive too as well, and we looked good. I thought we were actually going to win the football game, and then we couldn't do anything after that. We didn't score until the third quarter, and that was on a field goal. But other than that, the defense did really well. The past few weeks, offense has been doing well. The defense has not, and this week the defense looked good and the offense has not. So we still have not had a full, complete game yet as a team, and hopefully we can get on track this week and have both sides of the ball do well.
Now you look at the total offensive yards for this game: 371 for Southern Miss, 352 for UL. So, look, by no means, when you look at the yards, was this a letdown or a big game by either team? Okay.
Yeah, there was a lot of stats that UL looked much better than everything else.
Right.
And it just didn't show that in the score.
Right. No, yeah, no. And look, I mean, UL had more offensive plays. They had more scoring opportunities. UL, ran the ball almost twice as much as Southern Miss did. So look, you look at the stats initially, and we had more first downs than Southern Miss did. We had 19, they had 14. So, it's offensively, it just kind of looked very slow moving, so to speak. For both sides, it was slow moving. Braylon Braxton, who I came in thinking that he would throw for 250 yards, only threw for 238? Is that what it was?
Yeah, and he had that 98-yard touchdown as well. So
no, he did throw so as much. He did throw a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Braylon Braxton, and look, to be fair, out of those 238 yards, I do see y'all's comments. I'll get to y'all in just a second, Mark. 238 yards, but to be fair, 98 of those yards came from a single pass where the receiver was wide open on the right, 20-yard pass, broke free, or he was wide open, and it was a 98 yard touchdown pass. So realistically, Southern Miss had 140 yards passing, taking away that play right there. Meanwhile, UL was just not able to get the passing game going. We only had 135 yards total. Walker Howard, who we did talk about last week, he did show up and come back in practice. He, practiced and played for the first time since that first game of the season. Lunch Winfield was, obviously your starter here, and he did not look as good as we were expecting. 12 for 21, 112 yards. Just another game where, the passing game for him has not looked good. And Coach Des, after the game, did say that Lunch did come down with some sort of injury just before the game started, the Thursday before the game. So Lunch obviously wasn't in the best shape to play a game. Mark over here says, how did USM beat UL? And look, you said it in your second comment. Southern Miss is good this year with Coach Huff. They are a good football team. We were talking about this last week. Southern Miss does a really great job at turning the ball over on defense, and they did just that against UL. They had 2 interceptions, and they even had a fumble recovery. So they had 3 turnovers, if not 4. I don't know where the turnover list here is, but they had the turnovers as we expected. I expected Lunch Winfield to throw for an interception, but I also expected him to throw for 230, 250 yards. We did not get anywhere near that, including, not just Lunch playing, but Walker Howard got to play as well. One of the interceptions came from Walker Howard, and we'll kind of go into detail on that in just a second. You had something to add on that?
Yeah, we just had the 2 picks and the fumble.
Yeah, so
just 3.
They came into this game. Southern Miss came into this game as one of the best teams in the country in terms of turnover margin, in terms of interceptions. I mean, they were ranked in the top 15 in the country, if not top 10. So we knew they were going to come in and want to turn the ball over. They're not a good defense in terms of yards allowed. They allow a lot of yards. But to be fair, they played pretty good defense against UL, who struggled to move the ball through the air. They moved the ball pretty well on the ground. We had 217 yards rushing. A lot of it came from Lunch Winfield. Lunch ran for 98 yards on 19 attempts and a touchdown. But, overall, they limited UL to just 352 yards. So that's a win on Southern Miss's part because they came into this game averaging, I believe, about 400 yards per game, and that's just the average. Like, there have been games where they've allowed much more than that. So that's that. Another thing that really, was weird, on top of UL having the more first downs, having the more rushing yards, having the more red zone opportunities, is UL held the ball for nearly 10 more minutes than Southern Miss did. UL had 35 minutes of possession, while Southern Miss only had 24. So, and all things considered, the fact that this game ended in 22-10 in favor of Southern Miss pretty much says that the Cajuns lost this game because of turnovers. Those 3 turnovers cost the Cajuns the ball game.
Yeah, it was literally missed field goal and that fumble at the 1-yard line.
That fumble at the 1-yard line.
It would have tied the game. It would have been 20-20. Hope maybe go to overtime or someone won on a field goal, but score did not prove what actually happened in the game.
Right. The game was much closer than what that score.
It was a great game. It's just those 2 plays. Yes. You can't miss a 35-yard field goal in any circumstance. And then fumble at the 100. I mean, Lunch has got to do better. He knows that. So yeah, it's just what happened.
And look, Lunch last Thursday, the 2 days before the game, Coach Des, or it was on Wednesday, Coach Des said they were practicing. He threw a pass and he went down on a knee and had some pain in his oblique area. And so he came back Thursday, and the next day felt much better. And Coach Des said it was sufficient enough to say that he's good to go to play in the game. And it was clear that there was some limitations to Lunch's throwing abilities against Southern Miss. And Coach Des even said it in the post-game press. He said Lunch is nowhere near 100%. He's dealing not only with the ankle injury that he suffered against Marshall, but he's also dealing with an oblique injury. And Coach Des, by the way, did not specify the oblique injury. We didn't know that it was his oblique that was limiting Lunch up until this past Monday. Like, Coach Des in the presser said he didn't even want to get into it. He didn't want to talk about the details. Lunch, when he came into the presser, he didn't even say or mention what it was. So we didn't know what he had. Whether it was an arm issue, a chest issue, body issue, what it was, we didn't know until Monday. that it was an oblique situation. So now Coach Dez did say, and Lunch did say that Lunch finished the game feeling much better than the way he started the game. So that's signs of good news. Going into Troy, which we will talk about in a second, this is very much news that we need to hear, because there's a lot of other issues that this team is facing that's going to be that's going to play a big factor in deciding how this game might end up going against Troy. But other than that, look, it was just the turnovers and the costly mistakes. That's all it was that cost this game. Otherwise, UL would have won this game 30-20. They could have won this game easily 30-20. They would have had some sort of momentum and, won the game. And that would have kept them, 1-1 in the Sun Belt West. Southern Miss would be 1-1, and you'd be over Southern Miss. Southern Miss right now, they're leading the Sun Belt West, and just a win away from eliminating UL from playing in the Sun Belt Conference Championship game, which, by the way, if Southern Miss does beat UL Monroe, ULM, this Saturday, Southern Miss UL will officially be eliminated from playing in the Sun Belt Conference Championship game, because Southern Miss will be elevated to 3-0. UL right now is 0-2. The worst Southern Miss can go in the division is 3-3. Or sorry, they're 3-0 right now. They'll be 4-0 after beating ULM. The worst they can go is 4-2. UL's 0-2. It's tiebreakers, head-to-head is not going to do it for the Cajuns. So that's that. But yeah, Lunch threw an interception. Walker Howard threw an interception on the only drive that he really got in the game. And I know there were some concerns about why Walker Howard, was put in a 2-minute situation at the end of the first half in his first game ever since the Rice game week 1. And we alluded to this on Tuesday on the Cajun Sports Talk show, and whether this was a good idea or not. And you want to reiterate what you said on the decision to bring in Walker Howard late in the first half in a crucial situation?
Yeah, no, I love the idea. I mean, you can tell the whole game, like, you understand we were just slowly moving the ball, getting slowly moving the ball, trying to score the ball. Walker's going to come in, he's going to throw the ball, he's going to move down the field quicker. He's better in 2-minute situations. And he looked great. He was slinging them balls. He was slinging them. Wide receivers just wide open catch, dropping it.
Yeah.
There was like 2 in a row, back to back, right in the hands. There was like one bad throw he made, and then so it was 3rd and 15. He just had to scramble, make something happen, and just throw a pick. I mean, it wasn't his fault. It was just something he had to do, try to get the ball out, and it would just allow too big of a return. But I love Walker going in the 2-minute warning, the 2-minute drill, because Lunch is just going to go yard by yard. He couldn't throw it as well as he wanted to. So Walker coming in and trying to spark something was the right decision.
Yeah, Walker went 2 for 6 on that drive, 23 yards and an interception. Now, look, those 3 incompletions, I think at least 2 of them, if not all 3 of them, were drops by the wide receivers.
Yeah, there was one bad ball that could have been picked, but other than that, everything else is in the receiver's hands.
Right. So I thought, and I'll agree. I think the decision to bring Walker in at that point in the game was smart. And Coach Dez, alluded to this in the post-game presser. He said, look, Walker Howard is just the type of player who's more prepared for a 2-minute situation. That is his type of style, type of game. And I wanted to bring Walker in for that point of the game. So, but that was that. He finished off with an interception that eventually gave Southern Miss great field position to kick a field goal right before, as clock expires in the half, to elevate them to a score of 13-7 at halftime.
And look, if we score with Walker, everyone's talking about him starting the second half and him starting the rest. It's just if it works, everyone's going to praise him. If it doesn't work, it's the stupidest decision.
It was the exact same thing for Lunch. It was the exact same thing for Lunch. You had Daniel Beal, who threw 2 interceptions against Marshall. You put Lunch in, all of a sudden the momentum switches, the offense clicks, and now you're like, okay, well, we're going to keep Lunch, and he is going to finish the game for us. Yeah. Same situation would have happened with Walker here if he was able to do so. So that's that. But other than that, Bill Davis ran for 66 yards. Zylan Pear ran for 55. You had a 221-yard game in terms of rushing. It says 217 here. It says 221 here. So 220 yards rushing. You had a pretty good game in terms of running the ball. But look, Braylon Braxton also threw an interception. Tyrese Skipper had come down with that interception, and Cajuns just couldn't capitalize on it. So, and look, Coach Dez said on Monday that it was only about 5, 6, 7 plays that really turned the momentum of this game. If the team was there for those 5 or 6 plays and didn't make the mistakes that they did, they would have won this game. You had 3 turnovers, including one we were just talking about on the goal line, fumble on the 1-yard line where Lunch was trying to bring it into the end zone. That right there would have gotten you into a 1-score game, potentially 3 or 4 points within tying or winning the game.
Yeah, and that was after the missed field goal, huh?
That was after the missed field goal.
So it would have tied the game up. It would have been 20-20.
Yeah. So, that was a mistake right there that you can't have. Southern Miss ended up getting the ball at the 1-yard line, at their own 1-yard line. They go 3 and out, and then as they go to punt, with the punter literally pretty much on the backside of the end zone, he punts the ball, and then one of the players, UL players, goes and roughs the kicker. They get a first down out of it. So it's those small mistakes that costed the game for the Cajuns. That's really all it is. You had the players to win this game. You had the ability to win this game, and defense did the job. Defense simply did the job for you. You just had to do it on offense. Unfortunately, they couldn't do it. So that's that. The Cajuns fall to the Southern Miss Golden Eagles, 22-10. UL right now is at 2-5 and 1-2 in the conference. They are going to be heading to Troy. They will be taking the road trip to Troy, Alabama tomorrow to face the Trojans in Troy at 6 p.m. Saturday evening. Troy comes into this game with a record of 5-2. They are 3-0 in the Sun Belt West Division. They are tied right now with Southern Miss for the first place position in the Sun Belt West Division. So this game has huge implications for Troy's, chances of making it to the Sun Belt Conference Championship game. Now, of course, like I said earlier, if Southern Miss does beat ULM, UL's chances of making the Sun Belt Conference Championship game goes away. They'll officially be eliminated from that. And so regardless of what happens against Troy, you're now looking forward to just making a bowl game. So 2-5, the Cajuns need to finish the season winning 4 of these last 5 games, or else you will be eliminated from bowl contention as well. So Troy, I looked into them, and look, they're a pretty good football team. They've had some inconsistent times from time to time. You look at their schedule that they've played. They played against Nichols, who, look, I'll be honest with you, Nichols was up against Troy at the start of the 4th quarter. And Nichols was coming off of a win against Incarnate Word. Week 0, a really big win against Incarnate Word. Nichols right now really doesn't look that good of a football team, or as good as we were expecting them to look. But look, they came up. They went to Troy, and they were leading going into the 4th quarter against against Troy, and as 20-point underdogs. And Troy did come out winning this game 38-20, scoring 28 points in the 4th quarter to win this game. But to start the 4th quarter, the score right here was 17-10, Nichols. So Troy does have good second halves, as we've seen most of the time. Look, then they went on to play Clemson. They were up against Clemson, eventually fell short against Clemson late in the game. You play Memphis, who they lost pretty badly to. You beat Buffalo, and then you barely beat
in the Buffalo game. Sorry, they scored 21 points in the 4th quarter. It was 17-0 headed into the 4th, and they scored all 21 points and won the game 21-17.
21-17.
So it's those 4th quarters.
You play South Alabama. You beat them in overtime. South Alabama, by the way, is not a great football team. They're right now 1-5, 1-6. They are
1-6.
They're 1-6. Yeah, 1-6. You play Texas State, who, look, to be fair, they're a pretty good football team. You go into overtime, you win 48-41.
And then in the second half, they scored 24 points. They scored to tie up the game. They were losing 20-7 in the first quarter.
And then you look against ULM. You beat ULM 37-14. I mean, it was a pretty consistent game. They scored,
it was 17-8 at halftime, and then scored 20 points.
But the thing is, and the whole deal with this that we're trying to get to is Troy is a pretty good second half team. Unfortunately, they weren't able to get it done against Clemson, but they were very much capable of beating Clemson. I'll be honest with you right now. If they had beaten Clemson, they would right now be ranked in the top 25. They could have very well been ranked. Well, the Memphis loss really kind of would skew everything, but
they'd probably still be ranked.
They'd probably still be ranked. So, look, this is a good football team. Then you can't take that away from Troy. They have really good second halves, and Cajuns this season, I don't know if their second halves have really been good, so to speak. You look at the game against last week against Southern Miss, it was a very balanced game. You were up in the first half. It was a poor second half by the Cajuns. They just couldn't pull it off. You had a poor second half. Against JMU, you had a really good second half, especially in the first half, especially in the second quarter against JMU. You all had a really good chance at winning against JMU, who, by the way, right now is getting votes for the top 25. So you were close to beating JMU. You just fell short in the second half. You couldn't finish it off. Against Marshall, look, that was the only game where I think in the second half they really just stepped it up. Against Eastern Michigan, you allowed so many yards against Eastern Michigan. You allowed so many points in the second half. You just couldn't win the game like that. So UL has a poor second half game going up against Troy, who has a really good second half game. Not a good matchup to begin with. We were just looking at a stat together. Troy, who, look, they don't run the ball well, so to speak. They are ranked 99th in the country in terms of running. They only average 129 yards per game on the ground. So by no means is their running game good. But when they do outrush opponents, they are 21-2. 21-2. So 129 yards, it's not a lot. But I will say something. UL's rushing defense is 127th in the country. That is 9th worst, 10th worst in the country. You're averaging 204 yards per game on the ground. Now, against Southern Miss, you allowed 133. To be fair, I'd say it's a win, even though Southern Miss came into this game. They're not really a good running attack type of style offense. They were a passing style offense, and that's why they had 240 yards passing. What's up, lineup LeBlanc? Hope to see a big performance from our Cajuns this weekend. We hope so too. It's going to be tough against Troy, but we'll see. We're gonna kind of go into detail a little bit more about Troy right here and see. We will have our predictions to finish off this show today as far as what we'll expect from this game. But look. Troy is 104th in the country in stopping the run, 174 yards that they allow. Meanwhile, the Cajuns are 127th. So two defenses that do not have a good run defense going up against a UL offense who is 40th in the country in running the ball. We average 190 yards per game on the ground. We have a good running game. Going up against Troy, this could be a good matchup for the Cajuns because Troy doesn't do a good job in terms of stopping the run. They don't run the ball well either. So I'm going to say this. Our strength is the run game, but knowing that Troy outscores or outwins whenever they outrun opponents 21 out of the 23 times that they've played since 2021 or something like that, that is a good matchup for the Cajuns, and that is something to watch for, is will we be able to run the ball well enough to keep this game close or even win the game? Now you look at the passing game. You wanted to say something about the run game?
No, just in general, like both offenses are not good. They average 10 more yards than us. Their passing's a little bit better than ours, but they're still almost top 100, barely inside the top 100. Rushing yards not good. They average 5 more points than us, 5% more third down. So I mean, it's a really bad offensive matchup. Their defense is better than ours, so I mean, we'll just see, but we'll see.
And right now, odd makers have this
Yeah,
at a 50.5 total.
And
So
spread's 8.5. I think that's too much given all the offense.
Ooh, I don't know about that. Well, we'll talk about all that spread stuff in just a second. But the 50.5 go into what we were just talking about in terms of two really bad offenses. I mean, look, the odd makers are saying this could be a somewhat of a decent offensive game. I mean,
yeah, see, it opened at 50.5. Now it's 48.
Now it's 48.5. Yeah, so it's going down. But yeah, look, UL does not pass the ball well, and it's still an inconsistent part of the game. I think it's safe to say that UL's passing game is going to be inconsistent for the rest of the season. You're playing against good opponents, and ULM's been a good opponent so far, a good team so far this year. Although they've started to fall apart, and they have 31 players on their injury report. But yeah, look, ULM is not going to be a gimme. Arkansas State's not necessarily going to be a gimme. Texas State in no way is going to be a gimme. Troy is going to be your toughest opponent here. And look, pass defense, they're 31st in the country. They only allow 190 yards through the air. Meanwhile, we barely put up 150 through the air. We have 140 is what we average. Walker Howard is still getting his feet back in. And look, Coach Des was asked about what Walker Howard is expected to do, at least for this game and moving forward for the rest of the season. He's pretty much going to do what he did against Southern Miss. He's going to be put into 2-minute drills and help lead the offense to a score if they can. That's what Coach Des said Walker Howard's job is going to be for now. So you still have an inconsistent passing game. I think it's safe to say Lunch is not necessarily a passing quarterback. He hasn't proven that he can pass the ball well enough to make this a high-powered or even a good moving passing offense. You can say all you want about that, whether you agree or disagree with me on that, but we have not seen much from Lunch to say that he is capable of moving this ball through the air downfield. Yes, he had 240 or 250 yards against JMU. But guess what? Those are on 14 completions, and the receivers were just breaking free for big plays. That's really all it is. So that's what I have to say on that. As far as defense goes, look, UL, they have a good pass defense, but they don't as well. We're still ranked top 50 in the country in pass defense. We've slowly been getting worse and worse ever since we started playing Sunbelt opponents. Because look, right now against Sunbelt teams, we're averaging about 250 yards allowed through the air. You allow 260 to Marshall, 290 to JMU, 240 to Southern Miss. And we saw this at the game. Braylon Braxton did not look good. He did not look good. And not as good as we were expecting him. And like I said at the start of the show, 238 yards, 98 yards of came from a big play that should have never happened. So realistically, it was only 140 yards.
And he only ran the ball like 3 to 5 times. He didn't run it at all.
He didn't run it as much, and it led me to believe that Southern Miss is using him much differently than
last year.
Than what Marshall, I look at the same head coach, but yeah,
they just want to turn him more to a passer,
right? Yeah,
Coach Des was saying that after the game as well. Or no, I think it was one of the players. I think it was
someone
Duggar.
had said it. I do remember it though.
Might have been Duggar.
I'm not sure who said it, but it might have been Duggar. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing like we saw him last year.
So look, it's gonna be a tough test for the Cajuns. Defensively, Troy is much better than UL's defense is. They have a really good passing defense. Running defense, not so much. I think UL will be able to take advantage of this rushing defense that we're going to be playing against. But I don't know if we'll be able to throw for 150 yards against Troy. We couldn't even throw for 140 yards against Southern Miss, who we were talking about this. They average they allow a lot of yards. Southern Miss allows a lot of yards. They are one of the worst in terms of passing defenses. And still, we couldn't even throw for 140. although we have talked about it, their defenders like to move. They're quick. They want to intercept the ball. They want to turn it over. So I'm not saying Southern Miss defense was horrible or is horrible. They're a good defense. They just allow a lot of yards. We couldn't take advantage of that. And so going up against Troy, who, playmakers wise, they are really good at defending the run or the pass. You do not have a good passing game. I just don't know how this is going to match up. And so I think if Walker Howard plays a little bit more, you might get more yards through the air. But with Lunch, I don't know. I don't even think we'll have 150 yards passing against Troy. Running the ball, I think we can very much run this ball for 170, 180 yards, potentially 200 yards. But look, I think this game for the Cajuns is just going to be one of those very similar to what we did against Southern Miss, a 350-yard total game where you can't pass the ball well, you run the ball pretty well, and your scoring opportunities, therefore, is very much limited. I don't know if the Cajuns can really score more than 20 points in this game against Troy. It's going to be very tough. And as far as Troy's offense, who, look, they're not good. I'd say they're about the same as UL's offense, except they don't really have a consistent passing game. They don't have a really consistent running game. So their offense is kind of a mess right now, although overall, I would say their offense is in a slightly better position than UL's offense is. And I will talk about why in just a second, because for those of y'all who did not see the injury report, it is terrifying. But I'm going to say this real quick. I think the spread at what is it, 8.5? I think it's right where it needs to be. I would take Troy with an easy amount of cash here. It's currently at 9.5. They open at 8.5. It's 9.5. I would easily put money on Troy to cover the spread here. I just don't know if this Cajuns offense right now is anywhere near capable of putting up points against the Troy offense, who, look, they can put up points. We've seen it. They've done it the last 3-4 games against these Sun Belt Conference opponents. You've went into overtime twice with points going up into the 40s. So they're very much capable of scoring points. Cajuns this season are not. I mean, we're only averaging, 23 points per game? Yeah, I don't even think we've scored more than 25, 26 in the ever since we played Eastern Michigan. So
Marshall.
Yeah, against Marshall. So I don't know. Look, we were talking about this. Marshall did not expect Lunch Winfield to come into the game. When Lunch came in, he just completely shattered Marshall's defense, and he was able to do what he wanted to do. Ever since, defenses, or the opponents that we faced, knew that we were playing a dual threat quarterback, or they were playing a dual threat quarterback who is capable, very much capable, of keeping the ball and running it. So I don't know. Is Walker Howard a transfer? I think it's safe to say that Lunch Winfield will transfer out of UL after this season. As far as Walker, I would not be surprised if Walker does transfer out of here.
I think he's asking if he is a transfer.
Oh, I thought he meant, is he a transfer after the season? Well, yes, Walker Howard is a transfer. He did come in from Ole Miss. He is a redshirt junior. So he was at LSU for a year before going to Ole Miss for a couple of years, and then came to UL, pretty much sitting behind Jaden Daniels and then Jackson Dart. So he just never had the opportunity to play, and so that's why he's here back home in Lafayette, where he was where he grew up and raised. So yeah,
just got hurt first week,
and then he got hurt week 1. Yes,
he just can't get on the field.
He just can't get on the field. It's the unfortunate situation. And so he unfortunately was kind of put into a really tough situation this past week, and it resulted in an interception. So that's that. Now, I really wanted to talk about this for UL because right now they're very much on a struggle bus in terms of injuries on the offense, particularly on the offensive line. So UL released their injury report availability and all that yesterday, and 8 offensive linemen are on the list. You have 17 offensive linemen on your team. 8 of them, so pretty much half of them, are on the injury report in some sort of way. 4 of them are out: Isaiah Alexander, George Jackson, Jamarian Gooch, and Jacoby Ism. Jacoby Ism, by the way, is a true freshman who made his first career start this past Saturday against Southern Miss because Caden Morrow, who is another injured offensive lineman, was out for the game. Jacoby Ism came in and in place of Caden Morrow and started his first ever collegiate game and then got injured. He is now out for the rest of the season and will be getting season-ending injury due to a leg injury. So 1 game, and he is out for the season. Comes in to replace your starter for 1 week, all to only be ended up with a season-ending injury and having to get surgery. So that's 4 offensive linemen who are out. By the way, George Jackson has already been ruled out for the rest of the year. That is your starting right tackle right there. He's been ruled out for a few weeks now. He's going to be out for the rest of the season. Jamarian Gooch, who came in and had to replace people, starters because of injuries. He is now out for pretty much the rest of the season. Jacoby Ism, he's now going to be out for the rest of the season. That's 3 offensive linemen who are now out for the rest of the season. Zay Alexander, he's a redshirt freshman, I believe. And if I'm not mistaken, he is also out for the rest of the season. He's been on this injury report for quite some time now. And I think it's safe to say that he's out for the rest of the season. So your 4 offensive linemen who have been ruled out for this game are all pretty much out for the rest of the season. Meanwhile, you have 4 offensive linemen who are also questionable: Bryant Williams, Caden Morrow, Cooper Fordham, Xavier Brown. Bryant Williams is your starting left tackle. He went down halfway through the Southern Miss game last week, and he could not return. He has an injury. He's questionable to return this Saturday against Troy, and according to the depth chart, he is not on the depth chart, so he most likely will not be playing against Troy. Caden Morrow, your starting left guard, he is questionable. As far as the depth chart, he is on the depth chart, so he's expected to play, but he is questionable. So we'll see how things go. Cooper Fordham, your starting center, he is questionable. He is expected to play. He is on the starting lineup in the depth chart, so we expect him to play. Xavier Brown, he's questionable. He's not necessarily a starter, but he's not on the depth chart either, so he might not play. So your starting left tackle, left guard, and center are all questionable this Saturday. Your right guard, who is now right tackle, Jax Harrington, went down with an injury last week during Southern Miss. Well, actually, I don't know if he really got injured. He said, Coach Des said he got his wind knocked out of him. So he is expected to return. That is your right guard, now right tackle, because George Jackson, who was your starting right tackle, is out for the year. So Jax Harrington got moved to the right tackle position to replace that. And so right tackle, Jax Harrington is in. Matt Broussard, who is a backup redshirt sophomore, he is going to be starting at right guard according to the depth chart. So you have 8 offensive linemen on the injury list. There was a point in last week's Southern Miss game where all 5 of your starters, week 1 starters, were not in the game. Bryant Williams, or I'm going to go from the camera's perspective. Bryant Williams, Caden Morrow, Cooper Fordham, Jax Harrington, who's now right tackle, and George Jackson. They were not in. Jax Harrington is expected to play Saturday. So is Caden Morrow. Your other 3, yeah. That's the story of UL's offensive line injury. So Mackie Malo, he is a redshirt senior. He is actually a good player right there. He is expected to start at the left tackle position. He is 6'8", 363 pounds, so he has size. And he will be starting at the left tackle position. So you lose Bryant Williams, but I think Mackey is capable of replacing him. We were talking about this at the beginning of the season, before Cajuns Insider had even been a thing. On our Cajun Sports Talk podcast show, we were talking about Mackey and him potentially taking the starting job over Bryant Williams. We knew it was going to be a toss-up. Coach Des eventually said that Bryant Williams would start, but those two players are capable of taking the position. So we're not losing much there. You get Caden Morrow back. You got Cooper Fordham back. Matt Broussard has gotten some snaps at right guard, or some snaps in general this season, and he will be starting at right guard. And then Jax Harrington, who's obviously your star lineman, who's playing right tackle. He's been playing right tackle for some time. So there is good news on this offensive line front if this depth chart holds up. But just remember, there are 4 offensive linemen that are pretty much out for the rest of the year. And 3 of them were starters. Like, that's how bad. 2 of them were starters. So, yeah, it's been that bad for the offense. On a good note, or actually, it's still on a bad note, because this whole list, you have 7 players who are ruled out. Carter Milren is out. I don't know what's his deal. I saw him on the sideline last week. I forgot to ask him on his injury or his situation. Lennon Baptiste is one of our receivers. He has been ruled out. Now, the good news on our receiver side is Shelton Sampson is back on the lineup. He is questionable according to the injury list, but Coach Des did say he will play. And so, Shelton Sampson is back. We now finally have all of our starting wide receivers on the lineup. I don't know how much of a difference it's going to make, since your passing attack has still been very inconsistent. We will see against Troy. I say this every week, but we will see how it plays out this Saturday. I don't expect this team to get more than 150 yards through the air. If they do, it's going to be a win in my books, because they just haven't been able to do it much often this season. Jaden Duggar was on the injury list. Your inside linebacker. He is probable. He's going to play. Probably had a little hiccup there. But Banian, your prediction on this game?
Yeah, I think 8.5, or what is it, 9.5 now, is too many points. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. So I'm going to take the under. I think it's going to be a 24-20 type of game. And I think right now I'm going to say Troy's going to win it by 4 points. I think late turnover in the game is going to solidify that Troy, but 24-20 either way. But just right now I have it as Troy until we see both sides of the ball play the way that they know they can.
Look, he's always optimistic about the Cajuns, and look, I've kind of lost my optimism here, because I rather be right than be wrong. And every time I be optimistic for this team, I'm always wrong. So it's going to be tough, in my opinion. I think the 9.5 is right where it needs to be. I think Troy is going to run away with scoring 30 points in this game. I don't know if the Cajuns are even capable of scoring 20 points against Troy. You're getting injured players back. You're slowly getting better, despite your offensive line basically being a hospital right now. You can probably fill Our Lady of Lourdes Heart Hospital rooms with all the injured linemen that we have. But it's slowly getting better. And the good news is, look, Coach Des has said this a lot. This offensive line coming into the season, Coach Des really had high expectations for and high hopes for, because he said, look, I have my starting 5, but I also have 5 other linemen who are ready to go in whenever needed, and it will feel like the game really didn't change. Look, I'll be honest with you. Our passing game has been horrible, and our running game has been kind of inconsistent, but has it really been the offensive line's fault? It's not really.
If it was the opposite, then yeah, if we're passing more and running more, but I feel like running the ball better than your passing is definitely not the offensive line's fault.
Right. It's the offensive line here, Coach Dez, when I asked him about Jax Harrington last Saturday, and he said, look, this is the group that fights every single day despite what is going on. And look, it's showing. They've been allowing an average of just under 2 sacks per game. So by no means is that good, but it's not bad. It's like in the middle of the pack. You look at his injury report for the offensive line, and you're like, oh, well, this probably might be like a 5 sacks per game type deal for the Cajuns. And they're, just throwing interceptions, quarterbacks constantly getting hit. You're not running the ball well. To be fair, it hasn't really been that way. And so it's a true testament to just how well, these linemen that are stepping up and having to step up have been playing despite losing more and more. You get Jacoby Ism, who starts for the first time in his career last Saturday and just is now out for the rest of the year. So I got to give props to this offensive line. They're holding up against teams that are very much capable of sacking the quarterback. And UL hasn't had much sacks. They haven't had much mistakes from the offensive line that have really costed the Cajuns the games. I don't think there's really any game this season where I can really recall the offensive line really being a major factor in a loss for the Cajuns. So that's that. My prediction on this game is going to be 31-17 for the Cajuns. It's just, I don't know if the Cajuns are capable of putting up more than 20 points right now. Look, they've done it. Don't get me wrong. They've done it. But you've done it with Daniel Beal, who, look, threw 2 interceptions against one of the worst teams in the country in Eastern Michigan. And then you play Southern Miss, who has a pretty good passing defense. But you get Lunch Winfield, who they were not expecting to see at all, and kills them with his legs. You can't do that anymore because these teams now know he is capable of running, and they game plan accordingly. So that's my prediction on that. Look, I just hate to be negative. It's just frustrating with where we've been right now. I don't know what the solution to it is. I will also say the play calling has been subpar as well. I will say there's been times where I've looked at the play calls and look, I've been around football for quite some time now in offenses and offensive playbooks. Like I've sat with, offensive coordinators a lot in my life, and I've seen how they think, and I have a good idea of how they think and how they're supposed to think. It's just, I don't know if I've seen that productive measures from UL and Coach Dez, who calls the offensive play calls, so much this season. I was actually talking to one of the players the other day, and I was, talking to him and kind of discussing this situation with the football team and where they're at right now. And he pretty much straight up told me, look, Coach Dez is overwhelming himself with all that he does. And, we probably just might be in the best interest that we get an offensive coordinator to call the plays instead of Coach Dez. And look, I have respect for Coach Dez. I think he's a great person. I think he's a great dad. I think he's an awesome, mentor and a good coach. I just don't know. I think his responsibilities right now, when he just does too much. Let's put it that way. He has too much on his plate, and sometimes we see him, he's stressed out, and it shows. He needs some things off of his plate, and it probably might be in the team's best interest if play calling was not on his plate, and focus on just leading the team in general rather than calling the plays on offense. Now, look, I'm not by any means an athletic director or someone who is trying to give advice to coaches. I'm obviously not as knowledgeable as they might be, but it's just my opinion here, because something has to change. We're now sitting here with our 3rd season, potentially 3rd losing season with Coach Dez out of his 4. Something probably needs to change, and it's driving people away if it keeps up the way it is. So hopefully we'll see what happens, and maybe the Cajuns can turn it around. We'll see. But I'm not going to necessarily blame the coaches for a 2-5 season right now because, look, you've been injured a lot this season. You lose your starting quarterback. You lose all three of your starting receivers were out at some point this season. You lose obviously your entire offensive line is now out. So you haven't had a good offense. Defense has played well. And they're not obviously they're not one of the best, but they've done good and they haven't been injured much. Obviously, the defense can't just lead the game if you don't have an offense. And the offense just hasn't been healthy and consistent. So that's that on that. Banny, you have anything else to say before we wrap this up?
No, hopefully we can get stuff back on track this week. I'd say that every week, but it's got to happen at some point, right?
Yeah, it's gotta. That's sport. You make changes and momentum switches from time to time. It just happens. So we'll see how the Cajuns play Saturday. They'll be on the road tomorrow. They'll be playing Troy on Saturday, and then they will be playing in Alabama again next week against South Alabama, who might be a lighter opponent than Troy. So we'll see. All right. Well, without any further questions or anything, I think that'll wrap it up for today. We appreciate y'all for tuning into the Cajuns Insider show. It's rough. We're 2-5 right now. There's not much optimism. You're 2 losses away from pretty much being eliminated from bowl eligibility. So, you haven't had a winning streak of more than 1 this season. So it's very hard to really get your hopes up high when you have 5 games left and have to win 4 of them. So we'll see how things go. We appreciate y'all for tuning in. We'll see y'all here next Thursday at 1:30 p.m. On all Be In The Know socials. Also, don't forget, we are live for our Cajun Sports Talk podcast show on Tuesdays. This upcoming Tuesday, we will be going live from Knight Field at Lafayette Christian Academy with America's Flag Football at 5 p.m. this Tuesday. We hope to see you there, whether in person or just watching us on YouTube at Cajun Sports Talk. Tune into our show. And thank y'all for tuning in. We'll see y'all on the other end of this in a few days. Have a great rest of y'all's day, evening, weekend. Good luck to the Cajuns this week. Let's hope we have a fun and safe game and no injuries. And we'll be back next week. Thanks for tuning in. Y'all have a good one.